Humans have always considered and studied the foundations of existence. In ancient times, various creation myths arose. In the Bible, the world is said to have been created by God, and in the Babylonian myths, everything originated with the gods of fresh and salt water. It is typical of Western and Middle Eastern myths to perceive the world linearly. The world has a beginning and an end. All living things have beginning and end. Organisms born and die. In the Far East, the world is often thought to be cyclical in nature. The world does not have an unambiguous beginning and end, but all events are repeated. Hindus think souls circulate several lives from one form to another, and Buddhists seek to get rid of this suffering of life. In nature, cyclical nature of things is also obvious. Morning follows night, and night follows evening. The seasons change as the earth orbits the sun. Living beings end up feeding each other in the food cycle. In ancient Greece, a legacy of thought was born, which can be considered a significant starting point for scientific thought. Ancient philosophers, with the help of reason and questioning, sought to explain everything in the world. Aristotle can be considered the first scientist, as he not only thought and discussed, but he systematically observed and recorded the things he saw in the world. Aristotle, for example, described animals and their anatomy. Aristotle's philosophy remained stagnant in the Western world for a long time, since in the Middle Ages in Europe his writings were invoked as authority, but they were not properly questioned, not even when they contradicted observations. In the Middle Ages, scientific advances were taken mainly in the Islamic world. For example, in medieval Europe, relying on the authority of Aristotle, it was believed that women have fewer teeth than men. It did not occur to people to check the claim by counting the number of teeth in the mouth. In the new time, the first steps of modern science were taken. Based on the observations, the Earth's status as the center of the universe was questioned, and America was recognized as its own continent. Human teeth were also counted. It was typical for scientists of the new time to ask small questions. In the Middle Ages, the focus was more on the so-called big issues. In the New Age, Galileo dropped weights from the Tower of Pisa, while the medieval scholastic Thomas Aquinas tried to prove the existence of God through reasoning. Small questions are easier to answer, as they are easy to get answers to with simple experiments and observations. Aristotle's way of observing the world had returned, and in addition to observations, experiments began to be conducted. Gradually, the amount of data confirmed by experiments and observations increased, and the information became more accurate. At the same time, the position of authority crumbled. Over the time of the Enlightenment, industrialization was achieved. Merchants and burghers took power in society from nobles and autocrats. Finally, in the 1800s and 1900s, asking small questions led to a situation where big questions were no longer the exclusive preserve of philosophers. Darwin suggested that man evolved from earlier life forms, and in the 1900s, physicists observed that the universe began in the Big Bang. Thus, the constant accumulation of information has led to a situation in which reasoned and observational answers to so-called big questions can be sought. How did the world come about? Why are the laws of nature and natural constants what they are? What is the nature of nature?